Welcome back to part 2 of this week's episode of Leading Our Own Way, featuring our special guests. Now let's dive right back into the conversation and continue exploring their incredible journey. Well, you're on a few adventures now. What are you doing? What are you doing with yourself, Josh?
So I am. So in the last, time is a funny concept. In the last 6 months, I've kind of like stepped back. I was doing a fairly intense job. I was in the vet world. I was a vet nurse, doing all that kind of stuff. Great, very rewarding job, but very tiring on your physical, emotional, mental, everything. That job just took over my life in a sense. And just kind of step back into something. Some people will have their opinions on this kind of stuff, but I just stepped back into something that was very easy, that makes me enough money to pay my bills. So I can kind of enjoy. I've never been one that likes to, like, I don't know, full-time work has never been something that I'm like, of something that I don't want to be doing has never been something of interest. I'm like, I like my free time. I like the stuff that I'm a content boy. I like to do all that kind of stuff. So I just make enough money to get me by. And yeah, I kind of stepped into the retail world and just kind of got a job that did that. So I do that for my in real life stuff that I guess a lot of people don't know about me, is that's my job life. That's boring and whatever. And then yeah, I stream on Twitch. I make a lot of content. I interview a lot of professional wrestlers. And just kind of live on the internet. Ugh.
Yeah. What type of content do you film?
So I primarily do a lot of gaming stuff on Twitch, but then if anyone follows my TikTok, just random bullshit. But just, I don't know, it's somehow gained me a following that I never really expected to ever have. So I just kind of live my life and document it as the true millennial that I am. But yeah, I just kind of live in that world, and I guess, yeah, and then the interviewing stuff, which I'm sure we'll dive into at some point over this, but that's kind of just not fallen into my lap. I've done a lot of hard work, but just the last year has really ramped up to being like, oh, maybe I can do this a little bit more frequently.
Yeah, I mean, I can align with you on that, because that's similar to my journey, right? You know, a year ago, I would never have thought that this one is still going, and two, the type of people that I've always interviewed. I've interviewed some fantastic from the get-go, but I just didn't think the longevity of it would have been kept going. So I can totally relate to you. Going back to your vet life job when you worked at the vets, what was the push then? What was the push to? Because I don't think people just leave a workplace. I've left a workplace. I've left my industry in education to become a casual teacher, to pursue my purpose of writing the book and doing the podcast, Leading Our Own Way. People usually tend to have to go through crisis to make change. Was there a crisis for you to make that change in the workplace?
I don't know how to. I feel like when you get asked that question, you're always looking for the answer of like, this one thing happened and then everything changed. I don't think it was necessarily that. There was no like pinpointing of like, this happened and then all of a sudden my mindset changed. It was more so like a build up of things of like, I would come home at the end of a 10, 11 hour day and just be so gassed that I'm like, I kept asking myself a lot, like, is this worth what I'm putting my body through? Because I guess for a lot of people, even when I was getting it, because that job just kind of fell into my lap. It just kind of happened, and I just kind of was like, let's try this. I don't know. I love animals, and I feel like that's the caveat to get a lot of people into that world, is like, well, I love animals, so this will be piece of cake, and it's the complete opposite. You have to have a lot of compassion for human beings is probably the number one thing in that role. And human beings under a lot of stress, financially, their pet is going through, whatever they're going through, brings out a side of people that is very daunting and very intimidating. So if you don't have a thick skin and you don't have like an emotional barrier for a job like that, I wouldn't suggest getting into a job like that, because it's tough. Like emotionally, that first 6 months that I was in that job of like, oh my God, this is what people are going through. And you feel like you're taking that with you all day, every day. Like, I wouldn't be able to switch it off. I'd go to bed, be like, oh my God, this person. Because it's not just like, okay, one thing went wrong. There could be multiple person after person after person that have just lost their little one. And it's like, oh my God, like but you have to, yeah, just the emotional barrier of that job is probably the thing that kind of got to me in the end, and just being physically so run down and it brings out the worst in your coworkers as well, because it's a very high stress job. One little mistake can change the whole direction of an entire day, because it's just you're walking on eggshells in a sense, because like you cannot make those little mistakes, because it's literally, in a place like that, life and death.
Yeah. So it's chronic. I think what I'm hearing there, it's everyday stress, which obviously leads to chronic stress, doesn't it?
I guess in a sense, probably. I probably didn't even realize how stressed. I honestly didn't realize how stressed I was until the day that I was done.
Yeah.
And then I kind of got to the next day and was like, oh, wait a minute. It's 7 p.m. and I'm not dead to the world. Because sometimes you would start your days at 7 a.m. and then you'd get there and you'd go, I'm either going to finish at 4 p.m. or I'm going to finish at 11 p.m.
Yeah.
And there's no like, but again, it wasn't just me. It wasn't just me that was going, it was everybody. It was all a team effort. But like, you know, what else can you do in that situation? You can't just be like, well, that dog over there is just dying. So but I'm going to go home because I want to go and watch TV. Like, as much as you want to do that, you can't do that in that situation. It's all hands on deck all day. And I think for me personally, the reason I decided that it was time for me to go, and it wasn't just like an overnight thing of like, I decided it and then I did it. It was like it was months of like me being like, is this, because it is very rewarding. There's a lot of things in that industry, in that work, like that field of work, that's just like, man, I helped someone today. Or like, I did this. Like it sometimes you go home with a smile on your face and just be like, hell yeah. And you get to hang out with animals all day. I mean, it's, you know, it can't be too bad.
Animals, Josh, I think it's a good time to show some pictures of you and your best friend.
My bestie.
Yeah.
There's Giddy. She's a little shithead. I love her.
Giddy is in Giddy.
Yes, that is correct. And I know everyone's going to be like, you like basketball and you called her Giddy. And I'm like, well, Josh Giddy wasn't a thing when I got her nearly 11 years ago. She was my like moving out of home responsibility gift to myself, because I moved out of home when I was 18 and I was like, I'm going to get myself, I didn't want something too responsible like a dog, because they're hard work, but a cat, I was like, I can get a cat. Like, they're independent little creatures. Independent. She's independent. I'm very dependent on her, but that's a whole different conversation, I guess.
My phone's phoning. I've not put my phone on disturb. I'm so sorry.
Oh, look at that. I've done that so many times.
I'm going to put it on disturb. Not disturb. There we go. Sorry. It's ringing in my ears, which makes it even worse.
Oh, no. Oh, it's connected through your, like, yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, but, yeah, she was my, like, getting out of home responsibility gift, and she's been by my side ever since. She sat up because I said her name. She probably will jump up at some point.
I love that name. It shows me it's even more meant to be this, Josh, because guess who I'm interviewing tomorrow night?
I already know, so you can just say, I guess. But
oh yeah, Josh Giddy's dad.
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Warwick Giddy. I've had to delay that one twice because the internet wasn't working, and I was ill last week, which I apologise for rearranging you too. So, yeah, no, it's beautiful. Outside of the pet world, you've moved on from the pet world, but you've got into the real world, into the retail world. You're doing some other things though. You've taken on some projects that are quite close to your heart as well, haven't you? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I guess since I was as long as I can remember, really. I know some people, when they're a kid, they want to be a police officer, or they want to be a footy player, or they want to do this. I've always wanted to be the person that's like holding the microphone, asking those people why they're doing what they're doing. I don't know why. I think it was because I was never really athletic as a kid. I was never like I didn't hate sports or anything like that. I liked watching them, but I just never was like, my body just didn't do that. I don't know why. And I always kind of was fascinated with the people behind the microphone, in a sense of like, what's that person's deal? Like, I want to ask them questions, and you would never hear that. So I guess I always wanted to be that person, because I think I said this at the top of our chat, but I've never really been one to be shy. I'm not a shy person. I don't really have too much of a problem with introducing myself to new people. I've just always kind of been like that person that's like, I've kind of always been that person that will like walk into a room, make a noise, everyone will look at me and I'll be like, hey, get to know me. Like I've just always been that person. I've never really had anything important to say, but I've always been like, oh, let's make a joke. Like, let's fart. Let's do something. I've always been that person because I think I've always just been a little bit of an attention hog. I always have been. Probably middle child syndrome. But yeah, so I've always kind of wanted to be the person that's kind of like, I want to talk to people. I want to interview people. I want to put the spotlight on them. Getting my shine in, I guess, in a sense, but like just making the focus on someone else. So this past year's been pretty cool. I've been able to do that. I've always loved professional wrestling. I think it's just been an outlet for me to kind of escape into just in the world. And I've loved it since I loved it since before I can walk, what I'm told, but since I can remember of just like always kind of watching this thing. So yeah, I just kind of got into that world and got an opportunity to go over for the WWE in Perth in February of this year and interview a bunch of people that I watch on TV every week. And I don't know.
You did send me some of those pictures as well. For those who, let me show these. You'll have to explain these because I don't really know much about wrestling.
Okay, so that's Bianca Belair. She's like one of the top talent in the WWE at the moment. I got to interview her. I got to interview like a bunch of people. It was, as someone who studies the world of like interviewers and hosts of a certain kind, like I was standing in a room with a lot of those people that I kind of study, and I was like, what am I doing here? What the hell? I'm just a little boy on TikTok and Twitch that just says dumb jokes, and like somehow it got me into this spot.
Imposter syndrome?
Oh, absolutely. I was like, what am I doing? Like, these people are so much better at this than me. But it was, I didn't even know, I still, all this time later, this was in mid-February of this year, so, nearly a year ago now. And I still honestly don't know how to summarize how I felt because it's something that I aspired to do since I was literally 8 years old of like, this is what I want to do. And I did it. Even if I never do it again, I've done it once and I'm just kind of like, oh my God. Like, but it just opened up so many doors for me and just in terms of exposure of just people being like, wait a minute, like, I like the way that you interviewed, and that's like the biggest compliment to me. It's just like they're like, oh, you're not just a standard like ask a question kind of person. You're like, oh, sorry, Giddy, I just kicked you. Whoopsies.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I just kind of like, I don't know, I just got a lot of great feedback, and it just kind of set me in a mode of like my mind changed at that moment of like, wow, because I've been doing content work and Twitch streaming and podcasting since like I started in like 2018, and I was like doing it to nobody, like no one was paying attention to me. And then I don't know, sometimes you just got to go through those times in that world. Content creators will understand of like no one's paying attention to me, and then it just slowly builds up, and then someone important sees your work, and then all of a sudden you get opportunities like that. So I just kept grinding and kept going and going and going and got that opportunity. And yeah, and then a lot of people seen my stuff and were like, this is kind of cool. And then it's just kind of expanded from there where I get more opportunities like that, which is, it's still like, what the hell? I can't believe it.
So with that time in mind then where you feel like nobody's seeing your content, what's that time period you think where it went from, I suppose, nothing, you just grinding, you're doing it, and then something pops? What's that time frame for you?
Join us tomorrow to hear more from today's incredible guests and learn valuable insights to help you lead your own way. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you then.